Hi everyone, I hope this reaches you well. I just put together a PowerPoint for Whitefriars Theatre. Just a few quick notes. I haven't learned how to go to next slides without clicking the mouse, so if you hear, not to call attention to it, but if you hear the mouse clicking, sorry. The other thing is I might pronounce things wrong, so don't take my word for how these things are pronounced. And if I butcher something, apologies in advance. More down to business stuff. A lot of this presentation is on the environs of Whitefriars Theatre. There is some information on Whitefriars, but there's more about the district itself, and I think they're both pretty much connected as we'll find out. But the theater itself, there's not as much information as Whitefriars District or Whitefriars Liberty as we saw what a liberty was in Bly's article that we had to read today. But just be aware that this is going to encapsulate the surroundings of Whitefriars probably more than the theater itself. But before we get there, there's one quick quote from Ram Alley or Merry Tricks, which we were supposed to read but didn't, and it's a kind of a shame that we didn't as far as this presentation is concerned, because there's a quote from the play. It is the kingdom's eye by which she sees the acts and thoughts of men, which is, I think, a really important way of looking at Whitefriars as a district rather than the theater itself. But this is from, obviously, Ram Alley, and Ram Alley was part of that district. So there was this idea, and Mary Bly talked about this in her article, but there was this idea that the Whitefriars Liberty or the Whitefriars District, kind of everything goes and everything went, debauchery, whatever kinds of law breaking there was. It was allowed, but it was also watched. So with that said, we'll look at the theater itself. The theater was converted from a former Carmelite monastery. It was indoors. It was about 85 feet by 35 feet inside. Compare that to the Globe, which was admittedly an outdoors theater, but the Globe was roughly about 100 feet in diameter. So comparatively, the Whitefriars Theatre was pretty small. The Whitefriars had a discovery space, 2 stage exits on either side, and then above. The above could hold probably no more than 3 actors comfortably, and took about a minute to reach after exiting the stage. The discovery space was much wider than the exits on either side, and could hold such large properties as a canopied bed or stairs. The tiring house could be reached through the exits and possibly the discovery space. One last thing about the theater, it was the first private playhouse, and private meaning indoor playhouse, to be built outside the city walls, west of Ludgate, between the Fleet River and the Temple. So just to give a sense of what it was like, it was pretty unique and kind of filled a niche, as we will see. As far as the theater's operation, it operated from 1607 to 1629. The plot was purchased by Michael Drayton and Thomas Woodford in 1606. The theater mostly served for the King's Revels children, and that was a short-lived children's troupe who moved to the Whitefriars Theatre after being shut down from performing at Blackfriars Theatre. They were shut down by James I in 1608. There were some controversial plays that they were involved in, such as Eastward Ho, which is what Ben Jonson was arrested for. The troupe and the theater likely saw limited success. There was only a short 4-year operation of children's troupes. People kind of suspect that was because the plays weren't very, very popular. And scholar Mary Bly even refers to the theater as a disreputable venture. So the players themselves, obviously you mentioned the King's Revels children. Scholars aren't sure whether they performed for 8 months or 12. Regardless, they merged with the children of the Queen's Revels in 1609, and the Queen's Revels performed from 1609 to 1613. One small note on the King's Revels children. Actually, it turned out Lord Barry, was actually a shareholder of the first company, so of the King's Revels children, and he was the one who wrote Ram Alley. The children of the Queen's Revels seemed to merge with the Lady Elizabeth's players in 1613. Around 1613, they left for the Hope Theatre, and the place that was filled was likely Prince Charles' men. From what I could understand, there wasn't any record of plays happening after 1613. Again, it was probably taken over by Prince Charles' men, according to some scholarship. Regardless, the theater was torn down in 1629. It was replaced by the Salisbury Court Theatre which itself was burned in the Great Fire of 1666. So, and then also to the right, the history of the two maids of Morclac. And pretty soon the arrow will show up here. There it is. Okay. So, and that's just showing that the Children of the King's Majesty Revels was on the title page of this particular play. Speaking of plays, obviously Epicene was at Whitefriars. Other ones include Lordingberry's Ram Alley, as mentioned, Beaumont and Fletcher's The Coxcomb, and Nathan Field's A Woman is a Weathercock. The last one being on the far right of the screen here. The plays were catered to a homogeneous audience with a particular taste for homoerotic puns and situations, which resulted in a small but significant body of plays that are markedly different from those written for the amphitheaters and even for other hall playhouses. And actually, Epicene was actually written for the reopening of the playhouse in December 1609, and that was for the newly formed Children of the Queen's Revels. Demographic of people that attended the plays were mostly well-to-do fee-paying audiences, and that was unlike the larger outdoor playhouses from this period. Whitefriars was also more expensive than many other indoor theaters at the time, but the area, Whitefriars as a district, obviously had a lot of brothels, and patrons usually attended the theater between going to nearby brothels. Obviously, prostitutes were likely in the audience during performances as well. But again, speaking about the district itself, it was a place of sanctuary for criminals, so that also gives you a sense of the type of people that came that way. And also, Mary Bly said that George Chapman Johnson and John Marston knew the Whitefriars as a place belonging on a list of dubious activities and professions. So just to give you a sense of what surrounds the theater itself. But to put everything sort of into context, I've got some maps here showing where Whitefriars was. It was in the west part of London, and obviously right here it's shown in yellow. But this is the district itself. I believe the playhouse was somewhere around here. Regardless, it gives a sense of where everything is here. Obviously, if this is Whitefriars, as we can see written on the Thames, this is the Thames itself. I believe this was, I believe, Bears. I can't remember the castle name, but this would have been a castle. Obviously, London proper is on the right here. Obviously, some churches around the area, but this just gives you a sense. This is on the west part of London and farther away from the city here. It was located on Fleet Street. Here's Fleet Street is shown in red here. Whitefriars would be in blue. It was a block or so west of where Blackfriars Theatre was located. Obviously, this is a little bit more than a block, but Blackfriars is in red here, so not too far away from each other. And as we'll see, it was a lot farther away from the Globe. But also nearby the theater in the district were numerous inns. The Surgeon's Inn on Fleet Street, which I have shown in red. There were also numerous other inns that it was important to know that those inns were there because the district's brothels were visited by the swingebucklers from the nearby inns of court, and that was from the Shug article we read a few weeks ago. The other inns were Taves Inn and Barnard's Inn, and just to give you a sense of where all these are, we're kind of looking at around this area. There were a few inns. There were also a few churches too, if that changes anything. This is the Temple Church here. I think this was St. Duncan's Church up here. Regardless, a place where a lot of inns, a lot of people pass through, and obviously, like we have mentioned, a lot of debauchery. Speaking of debauchery, we have Ram Alley here. Salisbury Court was nearby. That's in the top right, as we'll see. And then Ram Alley is the red alley shown here. So just kind of in the mix of things and really not that far away from Whitefriars Theatre, just literally like a walk away. Salisbury Court is up here, just to give you a sense of how the street and how people might have flowed from the city into this area. Speaking of the Globe, I know I mentioned it. It was pretty far. Whitefriars was pretty far away from the Globe. The Globe is down here in red. Whitefriars is here, so across the river and far ways west of London itself. Here's a map just showing of where everything is in context. This is Fleet Street is up here. Ram Alley is here. Whitefriars is here. The Globe down here. and then just kind of putting everything together. This is Traders Gate and London Bridge down here. So just showing if this is London, the center of the city, just kind of remarking how many houses, how many establishments, places, people are between, Traders Gate in the central part of London and Whitefriars over here. I'm talking a little bit more about Ram Alley and just to give a greater sense of not only Ram Alley but Whitefriars District. Ram Alley was a place of evil reputation, cooks, bods, tobacco sellers, and alehouse keepers. And one den in particular, the Maidenhead, was supposed to be pretty bad. I think the other one was the Ram and the Star, which is what Ram's Alley was named after. And just to give you a sense of how close, again, these two places were, they were essentially in the same neighborhood. So even in 1640, a debtor taking refuge in Ram Alley was considered by his creditor beyond pursuit. And also Walter George Bell called Ram Alley perhaps the most pestilent court in London. Some other facts about the area and about Whitefriars District itself. Court records indicate there was an active and successful sex trade operating in Whitefriars. That was research found by Mary Bly. Most people visited the Whitefriars District as a sort of tourist destination. The actual residents themselves were generally poor. Whitefriars District eventually became shorthand for the sexual markets it supported. Bly talked about that in the article, but just saying that when you said Whitefriars, more than just the district or more than just the liberty itself was called to mind. And then finally, just some more context. Waterman John Taylor, and this was quoted in the Shug article, specifically mentions all the fry of our famous whores whose ancient lodgings were near Whitefriars. So just sort of like concluding not only the district but the theater itself. The general area was full of prostitution and debauchery. The plays at the Playhouse, meanwhile, reveled in the sexual promiscuity of the area, so they obviously kind of tried to ape what was going on, and I think that, as Bly said in her article, that tried to tie into that sort of kind of touristic, sort of outside of the city limits identity that it came to be known by. And again, just to clarify that point, that the district served as a tourist area for Londoners in the city proper. Again, the residents of Whitefriars District themselves, are poor. This area was meant for people that did not live there. Whitefriars Theatre itself kind of served to bring people in also, as well as the prostitution and the inns and the general debauchery, as I said before. Otherwise, I just have a list of my sources here. Obviously, these are already on the Canvas page. I also referenced Bly's article, and then again Walsh Shug in Prostitution in Shakespeare's London. If anybody, obviously I'll upload the video of this, but if anybody actually wants the slides or something like that, I can probably find a way of sending them to you. But yeah, otherwise, thank you for listening.